Stranger Things Season 4 is finally here, or at least the first half is at the time of recording, and it's as awesome as ever. It's got strangeness, it's got things, it's admittedly got more bones being bent the wrong way than I'm personally a fan of, but that's just a personal bias based on the fact that, I generally prefer bones being bent the normal way. Not that you'd always know that from the way I sometimes draw them. We have fun here. Anyway, I thought since a lot of the monsters that show up in Stranger Things are named after and somewhat inspired by creatures from Dungeons & Dragons, it would be fun to take some other D&D creatures and try to redesign them to see what they might look like if they were to show up in Netflix's fabled show, The Things That Are Stranger. Let's see how it goes, shall we? Let's go. Hit like if you want, subscribe if you feel like, but either way, enjoy the show. The following logs have been created using compiled evidence from eyewitness accounts, journal entries, and news clippings from the town of Hawkins, Indiana. In the 1980s, this town was subjected to frequent attacks from supernatural entities that escaped from a parallel dimension that was colloquially referred to by a small group of locals as the Upside Down. Attacks have long since ceased, but research is still being done to ensure that such entities and creatures can be dealt with quickly if they are ever somehow able to return to our world again. The first in our catalog is a creature that some interviewees referred to as the Otyugh, named as such for its similarities to a creature from the popular role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. This naming scheme was utilized for many of the creatures encountered by the group of locals most known to have sought out and hunted the creatures of the Upside Down. For a short while, this creature would wait just inside the Upside Down on the other side of a gateway between our worlds. This gateway existed for a period of approximately 2 weeks, near the edge of a forest on the outskirts of Hawkins. The creature would lure passersby to it using its limited telepathic abilities. It had far from the telekinetic strengths found in beings such as Subject 11, but was skilled enough to project messages and a yearning curiosity into the minds of any who came within 100 feet of the open gateway. Those struck by its messages would be driven to walk through the gateway to investigate, only to then be attacked on the other side by the Otyugh, who would use 2 of its 3 tentacles to impale them with dozens of jutting bones, then devour them. While the creature reportedly looked able to consume a human whole with ease as it stood over 8 feet tall and had a very large mouth even for its size, it would allegedly chew its victims and leave some pieces spilt around it post-meal, then use the uneaten parts to create a gruesome nest for itself. There it rested until it became hungry enough to once again lure in a new victim. The creature was allegedly torn to pieces itself by Subject 11 many years ago, but as with such creatures as the Demogorgon, it is possible that there are more of this species still in existence in the Upside Down. Now, this was not one of the creatures I'd originally planned to use for this episode. It was kind of a last-minute decision. In fact, this was actually the last drawing I did for this episode, but I really liked how it turned out. I'm super glad I ended up going with it. The main inspiration for the design I was taking was from the look of the Mind Flayer at the end of Season 3, and the Demogorgon with the flowery, split-open mouth kind of thing. And I think it actually really helped that I'd just recently done a Venomized episode with Multiverse's Maximum Venom, because I approached the goopier, fleshier bits of this character in the same way I would doing a Venomized character, where it's really kinda slimy and parts are just bubbling off it, and I really like that texture to it, contrasted with the parts of it on top and on its head that are like just kinda white and bumpy. I think this one came together really well, and I don't know if it's really good practice to start with the best drawing of the episode, but this is definitely my favorite. The next creature logged was codenamed Basilisk. It was a semi-draconic creature with a long neck, 6 legs, 2 tails, and 2 sets of mouths. When both mouths were closed, its head resembled the Demogorgon, the first creature encountered by the people of Hawkins. When the first mouth opened, however, it revealed that within was another maw, in fact, a whole nother head. It also revealed a set of 5 glowing eyes. If it looked at you with these and you looked back, you would become completely petrified. Your body would go into an instant coma with your limbs all frozen in place, so victims would often be found standing upright, yet completely unconscious. This creature was one of the larger ones in scale, with its neck reaching 10 feet high. Because of this, there were few places it could hide other than in the woods of Hawkins once it came through to our world. There, it dug an underground burrow for itself that descended around 35 feet into the earth. While in our world, it would hunt down groups of hikers or high schoolers partying out in the woods away from the prying eyes of their parents. The creature would petrify the groups and choose one victim to consume, leaving the others to come back for later. It would eat one person per day when it could, though on multiple occasions, search parties would find the group before all members had been devoured, and the remaining would be taken to the hospital. None were able to awaken, however, until the creature had finally been killed. At first, those tasked with dealing with the creature attempted to kill it with conventional weapons, but they found that the Basilisk had rapid recovery abilities. One of its legs had been severed in a fight, then a few days later, when it was sighted, the limb had nearly completely grown back. The only way they finally were able to deal with the creature was by using a significant supply of dynamite to blow up its cavern and bury it under many feet of stone and earth. For some weeks after, those who'd hunted it were concerned it may return, but the creature was never after seen again. Now, in drawing this one, I started to notice that these creatures feel a little bit too cartoony to be in Stranger Things. They kind of feel like they might fit a bit more into an animated series of Stranger Things, or maybe even like a junior novelization of Stranger Things or something like that. But because of the speed I have to do these videos at, I can't really take the time to workshop some different art styles that would work better. Plus, obviously, I like using my art style the best. And overall, I still like the designs of a bunch of these, especially this one, though I do wish composition-wise I'd lowered its head back down a little bit more. You'll probably be able to get a sense of that better when you see the final image, and maybe shifted its tail back a bit more to our right, so that its whole body could move a bit to the left, but that's all kind of nitpicky stuff. The main thing I was focusing on was designing its head, giving it a bit of a Demogorgon head, then with another more basilisk-like head on the inside, though I guess that inside head doesn't look a ton like a basilisk. Also, I am 2 for 2 with doing the wrong number of legs on these D&D creatures. Basilisks are supposed to have 8, and the Otyughs are supposed to have 3. But, I mean, you know, it's not like the Mind Flayer in Stranger Things actually looks anything like a Mind Flayer in D&D, so, you know, making changes isn't really a big deal. In fact, you know, it's kind of the whole point of doing this episode. Anyway, this is one of my favorites of the episode, and I hope you all like it. The next creature had a body similar to that of a large bear, with a head that somewhat resembled an owl, hence being named after an owl bear. The creature's body was partially coated in matted fur and feathers, but the majority of its hide appeared like exposed muscle and tissue. It had massive claws and a series of sharp bones jutting from its backside. The owlbear didn't have the same degree of hunting tactics as previous creatures discussed. This beast seemed more similar to a bear from our world, save for its much more inherently aggressive nature. It would violently attack any creature or person it came across, and often wouldn't even eat all its victims, simply tear them apart and leave their bodies strewn about the woods. This creature, luckily, had a very similar weakness to some others from the Upside Down, an aversion to fire. It was able to be warded off with a significant enough flame. The group of locals who dealt with many of the creatures vexing the town had originally planned on hunting down the creature with Subject 11, to simply have her use her telekinetic abilities to destroy it. But, at the time, she was preoccupied with other issues the town was facing. The way the creature was eventually handled was by the rest of the group luring it out and impaling it with various flaming tools and weapons, pitchforks, spears, and so on. With enough of these flaming weapons driven into the creature, its fur eventually caught fire, and then after, the flames overwhelmed and destroyed it. On later occasions, more of this species were seen by those who had to return to the Upside Down, so we have confirmation that more do exist, but none since have come through to our world. Now, I'd never drawn an owlbear before, but I knew it was going to be kind of fun for me because in one of the lengthier D&D campaigns I've played in my life, my character had a pet owlbear that he raised from very young, though I think it ended up dying by falling off a cliff or something, so that's sad. But anyway, when I started thinking about this one, I wasn't sure if there was going to be enough that I could change to fit it into Stranger Things, but I then started thinking about giving it a sort of fleshier kind of look, not quite to the same degree as the first drawing where it's amorphous flesh, but actually looking at anatomy of bears and taking inspiration from that. And once I started thinking about that, I was like, okay, I think this will work well. So I gave it a bit of a sort of burnt, fleshy kind of look, almost like Vecna has in Season 4. This thing did definitely end up super chunky looking, which often I don't love when I'm doing creatures. If they end up chunky, it's usually a mistake, but with this, because it's a bear, that actually was what I was kind of going for. And in the next Demons episode that I'm going to be doing soon, which isn't going to be another Dinosaurs as Demons episode, which was an option in the most recent poll I put out, but what won was Elements as Demons. So I'm going to be drawing an ice or cryophobia demon that is likely going to take some inspiration from polar bears, so this might have been decent practice for that. But anyway, for now, let's take a look at how this thing turned out. The final log for today is of a creature that was capable of hiding in plain sight, even on a bright sunny day in Hawkins. This is because it was essentially a shifting mass of amorphous flesh that could reshape its body to mimic objects around it, so long as they were similar to its size. When it first came into town, it was around the size of a small dog, but the more it consumed, the larger it grew. By the time it was finally dealt with, it had gotten to the size of a car, which was the final form it imitated in Hawkins. It would hunt its victims by lashing tongues and tendrils out of itself, and use those to grab its prey and pull them in towards it. Once close, it would spawn dozens, if not hundreds, of dagger-like teeth with which to shred its victims and add their flesh to its shifting mass. When it first came to Hawkins, it was solely hunting small pets, as it wasn't large enough to consume much else. But after a week of pets going missing, it soon after began hunting small children. Then, any humans that it could find in isolated enough places to consume without alerting others nearby. The final form the creature took was that of a BMW 733i, the car of one Steve Harrington, a member of the group that often dealt with the creatures of the Upside Down in Hawkins. He'd been seconds away from reaching for the door handle of what he thought to be his car, when he noticed that the windows were so tinted that he couldn't see inside, despite how close he was to the vehicle. This created just enough hesitancy for him to step back. The front of the car then peeled open to reveal massive teeth and a tongue that lashed out to grab him. But he was able to retreat, and thankfully, despite the creature looking like a car, it did not have speedy mobility. The creature was thereafter dealt with by the group, or should I say by Subject 11, who often handled finishing off the creatures that vexed the town. Another of this species did find its way to Hawkins sometime later, but was discovered quickly and slain before it could grow much larger than a Doberman. Now this was actually the first drawing I did, and it was the first idea I had to do a mimic. I guess that might not be true. The first idea I had was probably to do a gelatinous cube, because I really like those, but when I got to thinking about that one, I was like, I don't really know what I could change about a gelatinous cube to fit it into Stranger Things design-wise, because it's just a big cube of slime. So then I started thinking about mimics, and, had some kind of similar appeal. They're got like very shifting forms, and then I had to think of what it could be partially taking on the form of in the drawing, and first thing I thought of was Steve's car, and that seemed like a perfect fit, but as soon as I thought about drawing a car, something in my head immediately went, oh, no, I don't want to draw a car, I hate drawing cars, I'm bad at drawing cars. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, well, I have to draw a car then. I'm a big advocate for, if there's something you think you hate drawing, start drawing it a bit more, because you might quickly get good at it or realize that you actually really do like doing it. I mean, I used to hate / be worried about drawing mech armors, and now I have a whole series of drawing mech armors on this channel because I tried it a few times and got decent at it. With that said, I don't totally love how this one turns out. It does look more cartoony than I was hoping it would. I drew it a bit too wide, and the rendering on it, I really like the slimy mouth part, but it's kind of hard to shade a car when you're drawing it in a vacuum, because they're very reflective, or most cars are very reflective, so generally they'll be reflecting what's around them, and since I was adding the backgrounds in later, wasn't really anything around this one to have reflecting off it. So what I probably should have done with this drawing is think about what could be around it, like maybe trees or forests or something, look at some reference images of that, of cars that are in a forested area, and try to sort of imitate that shading and lighting. So I'll make sure to think about that the next time I'm drawing a car. Even though I don't totally love how this turned out, I like it enough, and I am still glad I did it, because it forced me to practice drawing cars a little bit. Anyway, I hope you all like the result a little bit more than I do, but here's the mimic.
And there you have it. D&D Monsters and Stranger Things. Or, like, more D&D Monsters and Stranger Things. A little bit of a mixed bag, but overall I'm pretty happy with how this went. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you want more Dungeons and Dragons stuff, I recently did an episode on Pokemon if they were in D&D. And to all still waiting for it, I promise that is still going to get a sequel. It is gonna happen. And if there's anything else you'd like to see me do with D&D monsters or characters or creatures from Stranger Things, give me all the suggestions you got in the comments, because love to work with any of those things again. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote from my absolute favorite motivational speaker, Les Brown, who said that all of us are born into this world unique, but most of us die as copies. It's a lot easier to just follow what someone else says you're supposed to do with your life and how you're supposed to live, but it's so much more satisfying if you figure out what you're uniquely here to do and follow that path, no matter what obstacles come into your way. I hope that's inspiring to someone out there. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.